What if wealth isn't a single lightning strike, but an operating system, a set of private rules that decides what money becomes after it arrives? Discover Warren Buffett's 5 money principles that rich people keep secret, stated plainly and with practical steps you can use. These are Buffett-inspired ways of thinking about money, not magic formulas, not endorsements, not guarantees, but behavioral rules that change probabilities and create optionality over time. Think about 2 people who earn the same salary for a decade. One is constantly one pay period away from a crisis, trading peace for a pattern of purchases and debt. The other looks quieter, almost invisible. They save steadily, buy things that produce value, keep a margin of safety, and slowly build skills and ownership that raise what each hour is worth. Both started with the same inputs. They simply ran different rules. Those rules are what make money hard to take away. Before we dive into the 5 principles, a quick note. If this is the kind of long-term, steady money thinking you want more of, subscribe and stick with this playlist on long-horizon finance. It will help you turn today's decisions into structural strength. Now, let's start with Rule 1. Rule 1. Keep more than you display. Definition. Retain margin. The wealthy habitually save more than they feel obligated to show. They resist status signaling and use restraint as a financial tool. Money not spent is not merely dormant. It becomes optionality and resilience. Why it matters. Human beings are wired to show status. New income often arrives with social pressure to match neighbors, friends, or projected self-image. That urge creates lifestyle inflation. You earn more, you spend more, and your financial margin disappears. The mechanical consequence is simple. Retained money multiplies your ability to survive shocks, take opportunities, and negotiate from strength. Psychologically, restraint rewires impulse into choice. When you choose to keep dollars rather than display them, you're converting transient social approval into permanent flexibility. Example contrast: 2 colleagues get the same $8,000 raise over 2 years. Alex upgrades a car, a bigger apartment, and starts dining out more. The bump in lifestyle is visible. Friends compliment the bigger SUV. But months later, a medical expense and a job slowdown expose fragility. Credit card surge, stress rises. Maria, with the same raise, increases her savings rate, keeps her housing, and buys a modestly better laptop for work. 2 years on, Maria has a buffer, can say yes to a short professional opportunity without panic, and negotiates career moves from a place of options. Alex has better optics, but fewer choices. Short numeric example: imagine you save $300 a month from raises and bonuses and put it aside. Over 10 years, that's $36,000 saved. Compound it modestly at 3% in a conservative account, and it grows to around $4,000. That's not invisible math tricks. It's margin that pays for a car repair, a quiet career pivot, or a small investment in learning. Keeping more creates a small cumulative workbench for life. Practical step to try today. Freeze non-essential upgrades for 90 days anytime you get extra income. Track every dollar you would have spent on status items and put that amount into a separate account. At the end of 90 days, count the retained dollars and let that number change how you think about future raises. This simple test builds the discipline of retention. Rule 2. Buy assets, not relief. Definition: prioritize purchases that create value, income, or optionality over ones that merely soothe a feeling in the moment. Assets are anything that either produces cash, reduces future costs, increases skills, or raises your productivity. Relief purchases are temporary fixes for stress, boredom, or status. Why it matters. Relief spending feels good now and fades later. It's an untracked leak. Asset purchases change your economic structure by producing returns, lowering recurring expenses, or unlocking higher earnings. In behavioral terms, relief buys are emotional switches. Assets are deliberate investments in future capacity. Over time, the ratio of assets to relief purchases determines who ends up with compounding tailwinds and who ends up chasing the next temporary comfort. Example contrast. Two people facing burnout at work spend their tax return differently. Sam uses the money to book a week at a luxury resort. Immediate relief, memorable week, then back to the same pressure and the same salary. Pat uses the same money to enroll in a focused skills course and to buy a used camera for side projects. Pat's relief comes slower and is less flashy. But months later, a portfolio and new client relationships begin to form. Pat's income path changes. Sam's moment of relief becomes just that. A moment. Short numeric example. Suppose each raise you receive, you split 20% into an asset bucket instead of spending it on immediate comforts. If that bucket averages $200 a month over 5 years, and you allocate it to low-cost diversified holdings or to professional development that raises your rates, the direct dollar effect is clear: $12,000 invested in yourself. Even modest annual returns or modest increases in billing rate from new skills multiply that base over time. Practical step to try today: commit a fixed percentage of every bonus or raise to an asset bucket. Write that percentage down and treat it as a non-negotiable bill to yourself. If you get $1,000, decide in advance that $200 is going into skills, equity, or a reserve that reduces a future cost. Over time, this habit shifts the composition of what you buy from relief to productive capital. Rule 3. Protect the downside first. Definition: build shock absorbers before chasing upside. Downside protection means cash reserves, low fragility in your commitments, insurance where appropriate, and avoiding bets that would destroy your baseline. It's building an underside of safety that allows upside to compound without catastrophic risk. Why it matters. Upside looks attractive, but without a protected downside, it becomes dangerous. A single unexpected event, a medical bill, a job layoff, a necessary repair, can wipe out years of progress if your structure is fragile. Protecting the downside is not pessimism. It's risk management. If you have a reasonable buffer and a plan for smaller shocks, you can pursue higher returns with less likelihood of being derailed. Example contrast. Two freelancers both sign a 6-month contract at a higher rate. One spends most of the extra on lifestyle upgrades and locks in long-term expenses. The other creates a 3-month buffer, pays down a small line of credit, and keeps variable costs low. 3 months later, the contract ends early. The first freelancer scrambles to find income and draws on high-interest credit. The second freelancer uses the buffer to bridge time, finishes the portfolio improvements started during the contract, and lands a new client without a credit hit. Short numeric example. An initial milestone buffer can be surprisingly powerful. If you build a $1,000 emergency fund as a first target and then scale to 3 months of essential expenses, you dramatically reduce the probability that a single bill forces you into high-cost credit. If your essential monthly expenses are $3,000, A 3-month buffer is $9,000. Paying yourself $300 a month into a reserve reaches that goal in 30 months. It's not quick, but it's a strategic priority that changes your options. Practical step to try today. Set up an automatic transfer that moves a small fixed amount to a separate buffer account each week or month. Start with an attainable milestone, $1,000. Then raise the target. Treat the buffer as sacred. It's not for status purchases, it's your shock absorber. Rule 4. Increase the value of each hour. Definition: move from trading time for money toward increasing what each hour you work produces. This is leverage, using skills, systems, pricing, ownership, or technology to make each hour worth more. Why it matters. Time is the one non-renewable resource everyone has. Compounding money matters, but compounding what you can earn per hour changes the base. A higher value per hour multiplies everything else: savings rates, investment capacity, and career optionality. This principle encourages you to invest in leverage, things that scale your output without linearly increasing hours. Clarifying leverage, leverage here doesn't mean risky borrowing. It includes skill leverage. Learn a skill that lets you charge 50% more. Pricing leverage, set fees instead of hourly rates. Product leverage, create a product that sells while you sleep. And system leverage, build processes that reduce the time required to deliver the same value. Example, contrast. 2 consultants both bill 40 hours a week. One charges $40 an hour and works more hours to get ahead. The other invests in a niche skill, raises her rate to $80 an hour, and automates proposals and operations so she spends less time on admin. The higher rate with less busy work allows her to save more and to accept projects selectively. Over 5 years, that differential in hourly value, compounded with the same discipline around saving and investing, creates a substantially different financial trajectory. Short numeric example: if you can increase your hourly value from $40 to $60 by investing $2,000 in a course or tools, and you bill 1,500 billable hours each year, that's an incremental $30,000 in revenue annually before tax. Even if only half of that turns into retainable savings, the impact on wealth-building capacity is large. Practical step to try today. Pick one skill or system that can increase your effective hourly value over the next 6 to 24 months. Outline 3 concrete actions. Enroll in a course, find one mentor or peer who's already doing it, and schedule 3 hours a week for focused practice. Make progress a measurable metric. Target a 10 to 20% rate increase or a time saving that frees 5 hours a week. Rule 5. Stay quiet while you build. Definition: resist the pressure to broadcast early wins. Quiet building is a deliberate choice to avoid social validation and focus on compounding results behind the scenes. Why it matters. Public display of success invites scrutiny, comparison, and pressure to sustain appearances. It also converts private progress into public performance, which can encourage premature consumption or risky signaling. Quiet building preserves optionality and reduces the social tax on your progress. It also allows you to take incremental risks and learn without the weight of an audience. Example, contrast. 2 founders each raise an early seed round. One posts constant updates, hosts lavish launches, and signals success. The other quietly iterates on product, leverages early revenue, and keeps burn low. When growth slows, the publicly flashy founder faces pressure from followers and investors to maintain optics. Fundraising conversations are more reactive. The quietly building founder has runway, can pivot unhurriedly, and arrives at later milestones with stronger fundamentals. Short numeric example. Pretend you increase your retained savings by 10% every year, but also publicly display your wealth, which effectively increases your annual consumption by 6%. Over a decade, the compounding retained difference is large. The quiet builder keeps compounding growth working for them. The public spender repeatedly interrupts that growth with consumption spikes, reducing longer-term accumulative effects. Practical step to try today: create a private progress dashboard that only you and a trusted accountability partner can see. Track 3 metrics that matter to you: savings rate, buffer size, and a measurable skill improvement. Update it monthly and avoid sharing the numbers on social media until you hit a personal threshold you set in advance. Transitions that matter. Rule 2 builds on Rule 1 because retaining surplus allows you to choose assets instead of temporary relief. Rule 3 depends on Rules 1 and 2 because retained assets and disciplined buying make downside protection feasible. Rule 4 multiplies the effect of the first 3, and Rule 5 prevents social friction from undoing progress. Each rule strengthens the others. Together, they form an operating system rather than a checklist. Now let's see how these rules compound in a composite case study. Composite case study. The quiet compounding of disciplined rules. Imagine a notional person, Jordan, age 30, earning $70,000 a year. Jordan decides to run these 5 rules as an experiment. Year 1. Jordan adopts Rule 1 and freezes all non-essential upgrades for 90 days. The discipline increases his savings rate from 8% to 14% of gross income. He starts a $1,000 buffer account and sets a recurring transfer of $250 a month. Year 2. Jordan applies Rule 2 by allocating 25% of bonuses and raises to an asset bucket, half to low-cost diversified investments, or retirement accounts, and half to skills that improve his billing. That year, he takes a targeted course that lets him charge for a premium offering. Year 3. With a 3-month buffer formed, Jordan focuses on Rule 4. He negotiates a pricing change for his services and automates a client onboarding process. His effective billing rate increases by 20%. He continues to save and reinvest the surplus, resisting spending it on visible signaling thanks to Rule 5. Year 5. Jordan's income has increased moderately through higher hourly value and better projects. His investment bucket, modestly compounding at a conservative return, and his accumulated buffer mean he is no longer fragile to a 2-month income interruption. He has options: start a side business, reduce hours, or take a longer professional course. Simple numbers to illustrate the bend. Start with saving $400 a month at age 30, increasing savings by 5% annually as income rises, and assume an average 5% annual return on invested assets. Over 20 years, that disciplined saving, improved hourly value, and conservative compounding can create a balance that supports a wide range of choices: career change, home purchase without stripping reserves, or the ability to invest in further scaling. The point is not the exact dollar figure, it's the shape. Modest, consistent actions create voluntary options later. Cumulative psychology. The biggest barrier to this compounding is impatience and the urge to prove success publicly. People often undo compounding by prematurely spending the very gains that create optionality. The momentum that matters arrives when retained money grows small, wins into structural strength. Practical synthesis exercise. Identify which of the 5 rules you violate most. Score yourself honestly on a scale from 1 to 10 for each rule, Then pick the lowest scoring rule and apply a micro plan. One small habit to start this week, one measurable milestone in 3 months, and one policy you will adopt for any extra income in the next year. That focused approach converts intention into structural change, addressing common objections and limitations. Objection: I need to live now. Quiet saving feels like deprivation. Response: this system isn't about asceticism. It's about prioritizing long-term freedom over short-term applause. Small deliberate trades, a lower percentage of income today for more options later, preserve quality of life while preventing future constraint. You can have both comfort and durability. The question is which you value more in trade-offs. Objection: I can't save because of debt. Response: Rule 3 starts with downside protection as primary, and Rule 1 helps you find marginal dollars to fight fragility. For many, a parallel approach works. Begin by creating tiny buffers, $1,000 milestone, while also paying down the highest cost debt. Use the asset versus relief lens to avoid replacing old debt with new consumption. Objection: markets are risky. I don't want to invest. Response: protecting downside doesn't preclude prudent long-term investing. The emphasis here is proportionality. Small regular allocations to diversified assets or investments in your skills that increase your earning power. If markets feel risky, start with your buffer, then allocate conservatively and steadily. The goal is to increase odds, not guaranteed outcomes. Practical guide to the first 90 days. Day 1. Choose one rule to focus on and write a one-line promise. For the next 90 days, I will freeze non-essential upgrades, or I will allocate 20% of any raise to my asset bucket, or I will automate $100 a month to my buffer. Week 1. Set up the mechanics. Open the separate accounts you need, schedule automatic transfers, and block 3 hours in your calendar to plan the skill or system you'll pursue. Week 4. Review and measure. Has any temptation to display emerged? Have you maintained the buffer transfer? If you failed, note what triggered the decision and adjust environmental cues. Unfollow accounts that push spending, or set reminders of your 3-month goals. Month 3. Evaluate progress. Did the frozen upgrades test create a saved amount that surprised you? Are you seeing a practical difference in options or stress? If yes, raise the ambition. If no, adjust the plan. But continue the habit-building lens. Micro actions that produce outsized effects. Automate retention. If you automate a saving or buffer transfer the day you get paid, you're treating wealth building like a bill to yourself. Automation reduces willpower friction. Price yourself first. Even a 10-15% increase in your price or rate, if you have the track record, dramatically improves the math on everything else. Price increases are often less painful than you imagine. Small public invisibility. If social pressure is the problem, create benign excuses. I'm traveling more, or I'm focusing on a private project. The aim is not deception. It's preserving headspace to build. Reframe raises as instruments. Before you spend a raise, decide its allocation visually. 50% keep, 25% invest in skills, 25% buy something that lasts or reduces future costs. Making the decision before the money lands reduces impulse. A few realistic stories you can relate to. Story 1. The Steady Nurse. A nurse found small ways to increase retained capital by limiting new consumption after promotions. Over 12 years, she paid off student loans, built a buffer, and bought a modest home without stretching credit. She didn't show off, but she had options. Story 2. The Freelance Designer. A designer invested in a tool that halved her production time. She charged more per project and had fewer client headaches. The small tool purchase looked like a relief to peers but was actually an asset. It increased value per hour and reduced fragility. Story 3. The Small Business Owner. An owner who kept a conservative cash buffer survived a sudden supplier shock. Competitors who lived on razor-thin margins had to accept unfavorable terms or close. The buffer preserved negotiating power. Each story illustrates a different rule, but they all converge on the same pattern. Quiet structural upgrades beat flashy, temporary fixes. How to measure progress beyond net worth. Net worth is useful, but noisy and slow. Consider tracking these leading indicators: savings rate, percentage of gross income saved, buffer months, essential expenses covered by reserves, asset to relief ratio, how much of discretionary spending goes to assets versus ephemeral comforts, and hourly value, your effective rate or the price you can command. These metrics change behavior faster than net worth statements. Avoiding common traps. Lifestyle inflation trap. Don't let small, frequent upgrades become habitual. The easiest path to durable wealth is the one where you slowly and intentionally shift the composition of spending. Signaling trap. Social media and peer pressure are constant. Decide in advance what measures of success matter to you. Let external applause be secondary. Over-leveraging trap. Leverage in the form of borrowed money increases fragility. The safer versions of leverage are skills, systems, and ownership that scale your returns without increasing the chance of ruin. Final exercise: pick one rule and commit. Pick the single rule you're most likely to neglect. If you're impulsive, pick Rule 1. If you buy to soothe stress, pick Rule 2. If you're one paycheck away from crisis, pick Rule 3. If you're stuck trading time for money, pick Rule 4. If you broadcast every win, pick Rule 5. Then apply this micro plan right now. Decide one concrete action you will take today, one measurable milestone you will hit in 3 months, and one policy for any extra money you receive in the next 12 months. Write those down and put them somewhere visible. To summarize the 5 principles briefly: keep more than you display. Buy assets instead of relief. Protect the downside before chasing upside. Increase the value of each hour. Stay quiet while you build. Run these as an operating system rather than a short-term campaign. They don't promise wealth. They increase the odds that your money creates durable options and resilience. If this has resonated, download the one-page checklist in the description to turn these 5 rules into a simple weekly routine and a 90-day plan. Choose one rule to correct. Take the 3 micro actions listed for it and come back to this framework in 3 months to measure what changed. Quiet work compounds. Decisions today determine what you can do tomorrow. Start deliberately.